Hey guys, good evening and welcome to our next session on TCS Digital, our next YouTube live session, I might add, on TCS Digital. So, in this particular session, we're gonna continue ahead from the programs we were going through in the last session and try to go through a few more complicated programs, try to go through a few more possible questions that we can expect when it comes down to whether it is digital or NQT interviews, or could be any others in general most of the times as well. But our main focus is that these kind of programs you can generally expect when it comes down to digital. And since we have this session live on YouTube for you guys, we will be going through your texts in your live chat as well, and we'll be responding to any queries, any questions, any doubts that you may have, and we'll ensure to answer any questions that you may have within the same as well. So feel free to go through and be interactive within the sessions, and let's go ahead and start this without any delay. So here, the first thing we were going through, if you guys remember our last session, if you guys have gone through our previous session, we did this particular program called finding nth number of a series, where the series is a combination of Fibonacci and prime numbers. So the series will have even and odd values, and the odd values of the series will be Fibonacci numbers, and the even values of the series will be prime numbers. Like for example, 0, 2, 1, let's say 3, 1 and 5, and then 2 and 7 and so on. So all the even numbers will be prime, all the odd numbers will be Fibonacci series numbers. So whenever user wants to find nth number of the series, we basically have to divide it by 2 and find n by 2th number, in other words, of either prime or Fibonacci. So if you have gone through this particular concept in our last session, if you have gone through this particular program which we have already solved in our last session, all that we're going to do is take the same program out and we're going to convert it to Java and Python. That's it. So let's do this one at a time. Let's start with Java. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to create our function, a public class called code, which is same file name, which is same name as our file name. We're going to create our main function over here as well. That is public static void main of string arguments. Now, all that we need to do here is just read one integer n. And remember, since I need to read an integer from the user, I need to import java.util.star. That's it. So once we have imported this value called n, we just need to, once we have imported that, we just need to create an object of scanner class. Let's say sc equals new scanner of system.in. So for those who may not know this well, just remember, in Java, whenever you work through this and you create an object of a scanner, scanner can read from 3 different consoles: the system.in, the system.er, the system.out. You can read from some file stream, you can read from a buffered stream, you can read from many different stream options. But we're gonna use here to read from input console, and whatever is the next integer that we're going to enter in the input console, we're going to read it and store it in n. And once we've found out, we just need to do the same logic. We need to find this term, that is, if n is an even number, we need to find n by 2th prime number. If n is an odd number, we need to find n plus 1 by 2th Fibonacci's number. That's it. Let's copy the same, paste it over here, and we're just going to change this to system.out.println. That's it. So we're going to do the same thing even for the next statement, and that's all that we're going to do. Sounds simple and easy. Now, once this is done, we still are yet to create our let's say Fibo function as well as nth prime number function. We need to create these two functions. That means we need to implement basically all the functions that we had in prior. Now this is not going to be difficult. This is a very simple and easy task to prepare, simple and easy task to work on. So let's quickly do that and try this out. Now, here's the first thing. First thing we're going to do is try to create the prime function over here. When I copy this and paste it here, first thing I need to do is make it static if I want to access it without an object. Because remember, if a function is not static, you need to create an object to access whatever is part of the function. So the only difference here is you don't have square root function as it is. Square root is a part of math. You just need to use it as math dot square root. That's the only difference we need to do when it comes down to this particular function. Let's see if we need to do any difference in the next function. That is to find nth prime. Again, since we know C++ and Java are very similar when it comes down to syntax, there isn't much you need to change even here. It's gonna be the same logic. We really don't need to change anything. But when I go for Fibonacci function to find nth Fibonacci function, this is where I really need to change certain things. Because in Java, you can create an array of n elements dynamically. It's not like C or C++ where you can't create it. In Java, you can. So we can just write here int Fibonacci array is equal to new int array of n elements. This is how we basically create an array of n elements directly. You can even write the bracket beforehand, afterhand, anything works, no problem. So we have all these functions. Now remember, if we try compiling this and running this, we will get an error because let me just show you the error here first. So you're going to get all these errors. Let's just let it try to compile. So one error is that there's some semicolon missing. Let's update that first. So there's extra brackets. We have solved that. Let's try compiling now. Now, if you guys observe here, there's so many different errors. So many different errors that you can get here. Now, one of the first errors is, sorry, our scanner object name is SC. Let's update that. Glad that one of you pointed it out. We wrote the wrong object name for that. And there are a couple of other errors because when it comes down to C++ and Java, there are a few differences. So one major difference that we always need to know is in C and C++, I can use if with a function name. If the function returns 1 or 0, I can use if with that. Now the problem here is when I use if prime of 1 or if prime of 0, since we are returning an integer value as 1 and 0, if condition in C language thinks that 0 is false, every non-zero value is true. That is what in C and C++ it thinks. But in Java, if you return 1 or 0 or something like that, it gives an error. Because if condition in Java is expecting a Boolean value. There are only two Boolean values, that is true and false. But what we are sending are integers. Since we are sending integers in place of true or false, we will get this particular error stating that it cannot convert. So for those who don't know, Java is peculiar because you just need to know and take this one example to understand. If I write int a equals 3.5, if I do this in C or C++, the output is different. If I do it in Java, the output is different. In C or C++, it's only going to take the integer part of it, and if you print it, a will be 5. In Java, you will get an error on the other hand. Why an error? Because you're trying to convert a higher sized value, higher sized data type value into a lower sized element. Whenever you convert a higher sized data type into lower sized element, whenever you try to store in a lower sized element, it cannot store complete data, right? You're gonna lose some value. You're gonna lose this particular value. 0.5 will be lost. We cannot store decimal part in it. That's why we always get an error when we do this in Java. So that's the exact error we are getting twice here. If you guys observe this, prime of I is a function which returns an integer. But if expects a boolean, one error is int cannot be converted to boolean. Another error is, in this case, square root function. Square root will return, remember, square root is not necessarily perfect always. Square root can also return a dot value. Like for example, if you try square root of 4, you get 2. If you try square root of 5, you get 2.25 something. Some number will come up. So in that scenario, this is what is being returned. If it is returned and you store it in an integer, remember, whatever is the result of square root, where are we storing it here? We are storing it in an integer. Can I take a larger sized value like 2.25 and store it in an integer? No, because whatever is the after post decimal part of it, that value or that part will be removed from our program or removed from our data here. Only 2 should be stored. So that means I'm losing some data. Whenever you're losing some data while storing, Java does not allow it. It will give you an error stating that you cannot convert, where is it? Right here, first error. You cannot convert this because there's a lossy conversion, because square root always returns double value. What we are storing is int. I can't store result of double in int automatically. We can only do this if we ourselves explicitly manually specify. We need to manually specify that we are converting this over to integer. If we don't specify that, it's always going to give an error. So we need to write here that whatever result is coming, we are converting that to integer. This is done by writing int in bracket before it. This is called typecasting. This is particularly called explicit typecasting. So for those who want to pick Java, you need to know this little scenario. Anyone who wants to pick Java for interviews just needs to know a little example. If you use float a equals 2 and int a equals 3.5, I'll take double instead of float. This will work. The first will absolutely work, whereas the second one will always give you an error. Simple logic. 2 is a smaller element, right? 2 is a smaller element compared to double. When you're storing a smaller element in a larger sized data type, then there's no problem. But when you're trying to store a larger sized element in a smaller data type, you're going to lose some data. Whenever you lose some data, Java says, I'm not going to do that. I need your permission. I need programmer's permission, specifically by writing here that you want to convert it to int. If you do not specify that you want to convert it to int, it's always gonna give that error. So that's why we are writing that we want to intentionally convert this higher sized element to a lower sized element. Even if we are losing data, we don't mind. If we do this specification, there won't be any errors. So let's compile. And now that error is no longer there. We have other errors instead. Let's go to the other error. The other error is this if prime of I. Now remember, if condition in Java expects boolean value, not integer value. I have one question, so it will take 3 or 4. Yeah, good question. See, it always takes the decimal value of it. Even if it is 3.9, if it is 3.9, what do you think will happen? I'm taking int a equals 3.9. I'll give you this scenario here. I'll just make one small change, then I'll explain the different scenarios, because there are 2 different cases when it comes to Java. In one case, you can make it to 4. In another case, it will become 3. I'll try to explain both cases, both scenarios right after this is done, since I've received that question. So let's take this scenario. If prime of I. Now prime of I returns integer. If expects boolean. Since if expects boolean, I need to make a comparison. I'll write prime of I. If the result is 1, then do this. If the result is 0, then don't do this. So this is one more change I have to make. Once this change is also made, let's try compiling this program now. Now we still have two errors. That is, it says non-static method cannot be referenced from a static constant. What it says is, this is not a static function. In Java, whenever you have a non-static function, like, see, main is a static function. Main can access anything. But if you have a non-static function can only access non-static data. It cannot access any, very sorry, a slight mistake in terms of speaking here. Let me just rephrase this. Kindly ignore the last sentence. See, this is a static function, right? And these are your non-static functions. Now, whenever I'm accessing non-static data, this belongs to the class called code. Whenever I'm accessing non-static data of class called code, I need an object of the class. Now main has static. That means main doesn't require an object. You can call main without creating an object. But for other things, like for let's say a scenario like any thing which has any let's say statement or any function which has static, you can access it without creating an object. Now I don't want to create an object separately by taking more memory and everything, so I'll make all these functions as static, so I can access them without an object. So that is the main reason why we write static even in main. For those who may not know, the reason we write static in main is because whenever we talk about main function, we need to know and remember that. Just remember, we need to know and remember. I have one question. We can specify static for the method instead of object. Yes, instead of creating the object, the function we are making it as static. Absolutely right. So what we're doing here is, the reason we specify static for main is because the moment your program starts, it needs to go to this class and execute main function, right? If main function is not static, I need to create an object of this class. But when can I create an object of this class? When I go to main. So there's a deadlock over there. Like, if I don't make it static, I cannot enter this class. If I cannot enter this class, I cannot create object to call main. So to avoid this, we have to always make it static. That's the reason why we use static keyword over there. So let's try compiling this, and we see that there are much more errors now. Now that we solved it, we got a lot more errors. I think I wrote static somewhere where it shouldn't have been written. Let's just see where we have written that. So let's take a look at this. Yes, here it is. It shouldn't have been written there. So let's try running this. Let's try compiling this to see if there are any errors. None. So let's execute this quickly now. So there is Java space code, and I'm just going to write something like 2. Our second element is supposed to be 2. That's right. If I try 3, that is 1. If I write 4, that is our second prime number. If I write 6, that is our if I write 6, that's our third prime number, and so on. So we're able to get this program perfectly. We're able to execute this right. Now to go ahead with this, before I go ahead, there was one particular question that was, if I have one question. We don't pass any arguments in string args, so why take it in main method? Can you elaborate? Alright, simple. See, in C and C++ language, it is not compulsory for you to read command line arguments, because you have two different signatures for main. You can write main function without reading any signatures. You can also write main function by reading signatures. Whereas in Java, command line argument specification is compulsory when it comes to main. It is basically compulsory because whether you, I'll just point it out, whether you write anything or don't write anything, it specifically needs this information because it needs to handle certain internal exceptions. The main reason is it should handle exceptions internally. So if you don't enter any value, to ensure that it retains that the number of parameters are none, or it's just basically nothing in that case. So to note that, to understand that, it needs to handle some internal exceptions. To do that we basically need to specify this. So that's the basic idea. So just remember, by declaring that you may use, you're stating that at any point of time you may or may not want to use, and at the same time it also makes sure that it will raise internal exceptions automatically and figure it out, solve it if there are no errors, if there are any issues. That's basically why and how we use it. So it's basically a compulsory part in Java. Now, let's move ahead over to the next scenario. I have one question. One of you asked, will it take 3 or 4? Let me just quickly take this example without taking too much time. I have int n equals 3.5. Now, if I print, let's say, we're going to get an error here. Simple. In this case, we're going to get an error. Reason, we cannot convert 3.5 over to an integer because integer is smaller than that, we will lose data. So we need to intentionally write that we need to convert to integer. So when you do convert to integer, let's say now you get 3. To the question, even if you write 3.99, let's say, you still get 3 itself. That's your whole logic when it comes down to this. Now, on the other hand, if you take it something like double n equals 3.99, and then if you use something like conversion in different ways, or if you want to print double as it is, you'll get your 3.99 value as it is. So remember, if you want to convert to a smaller size data type, we always need to explicitly do that. Otherwise, we'll always get an error for it. And the other thing we need to know very, very clearly is that, let me just copy this. This is our Java code. Let's also copy our C++ code very, very quickly for this particular program. And this is how it works. Also, the other thing we need to know in Java is whenever you use a function with an if condition, you need to perform comparisons, because you cannot just return integer back to a condition. If you want to return, you can return boolean value like true or false, but you cannot return integer. You can return true or false as keywords, that are as values. That may work. Now, let us move ahead here, and we'll try very, very quickly to convert it to Python. It's not going to take too much time. I'm just going to take whatever is there in Java. I'm just going to copy this, paste it here, and we're just going to convert it very quickly. Remember, guys, first thing, I'm just going to copy whatever is in main. Simple logic. So simple logic. So all that we are doing, I have one question. Is it possible to paste the code in chat? Since I'm running in different mode, code right away may be difficult. What we can do is paste the entire code at the end of the session, as we always do. You can let me know if that is all right, because in all our sessions, by the end of the session, whatever programs we do take up, all the programs taken in that session, we end up sharing that via a link in chat, so you can access this later on as well. If you're okay with that, you can let me know. Or if you guys want to access it simultaneously, that's going to be a little difficult, because I'd have to copy this, paste it in a link, share the link and everything. I hope you guys can understand that. I hope there's no issue in that case. Now let's go ahead very quickly over here. In this case, I don't need to declare a value. I don't need to use any of this. I just need to write n equals input wrapped around by integer, because input function by default reads strings. Let's just remember, by default input function always reads anything as a string, but since I'm converting it to an integer over here, it's going to be, sorry guys, it's going to be read as integer, or it's going to be stored as integer. Now again, same thing, if it's even, we just print the result here. If it is odd, we just print the result here. That's it. This is our main function. So our code got even smaller here. Now let's go on to the next function that we have, that is Fibonacci function. Let's do that over here. So to define Fibonacci function, I just need to use define Fibo of n. That's it. We're sending n, we're receiving it here. That's all, nothing else. And there's no concept of arrays directly in Python. So what we need to do here is, instead of arrays, we need to create a list. And in that list, first two elements will be 0 and 1. So I'm going to create a Fibonacci list instead of Fibonacci array, which is going to have 0 and 1 as my first two values. So whatever we did here as the first three lines, create an array and then add two elements for first and second index, we're doing it in just one line over here. Again, much simpler. After that, our for loop also changes. Since we need to go from 2 to n minus 1, I'm going to use for I in range of 2 comma n. Because remember, it is same as for I equals to I less than n, I plus plus. This is the same concept. For those who want to know, who want to learn more about this, and if you find it a little confusing, just remember this. The logic is like this. For I, this is your initialization. I initializes to 2. Condition is I should be less than n. By default, I increases by 1. That's the whole scenario. So here I'm gonna append to the next value. Again, you can use fib list of I, or you can also use fib list dot append. Append means you're adding an element to the end. The element you're adding to the end is the sum of previous two elements. That is fib list of I minus 1 plus fib list of I minus 2. That's it. And at the end, whatever is at the index n minus 1, we are going to return. So that's the same logic. There's no difference in that. So we just converted the entire program to just, entire function to just 4 lines. I have one question. We have for each in Java. Can we use that? Yes, for each is generally used to go through each element of a string, or each element of, let's say, an array or something like that. If you want to traverse through an array or traverse through a string or something like that, then you can use. Whenever you use for each, you're going to get element inside an array. That's the idea. I have one question. There's an extra tab space here in Fibo function that results in error. Let's see. See, it doesn't really matter how many tab space you start with. At the question I've received, let's clear this misconception. It's up to you to choose number of tab space. It's not compulsory that it should start with only one tab space. You can use 2 tab space, 3 tab space, 4 tab space, anything is fine. But throughout the program, it should remain same. Here, since we have a for loop, within the for loop, I'm using this separately over here. So we won't get an error just because we are using 2 tab spaces over here. I have run one question, return fib list, right? See, no. Yeah, fib list of n minus 1, right? That's one change we haven't done. So glad that all of you are coming up with all these interactive answers and staying interactive. That's a fantastic thing to always hear. Now let's go for the next question, that is to find nth prime. So again, I'm just going to write it as define nth prime of n. That's it. So here we're going to do the same thing. Let's remove these brackets. We really don't need them. Let's start with one thing at a time. If n is 1, we return 2. That's it. No semicolon. After that, we need to create multiple variables. So I'm just going to write count equals 1 and I equals 3 in 2 separate lines. Or you can also use count comma I equals 1 comma 3. This can also be done. Count will be given the value of 1. I will be given the value of 3. So this is also very much possible in Java. I'll just do one little thing to show you guys here. A comma B comma C equals 1, 2 and 3, and I'm just gonna print A and B and C. That's it. Let's take a look at this. Let's compile. Sorry, it's not Java. Let's interpret. I'll just use Python 3. Since I have Python 2 and 3 both, I'm using Python 3 particularly here. Right, so I'll just write code.py. Now I'm supposed to get 1, 2, 3 values as expected. So we can even copy like this. So let's go ahead and move ahead from here. So we could save space, save number of lines as well. And now the while loop. While count is not equal to n. Let's remove the brackets. We don't need them. In this, if prime of I is equal to 1, let's again remove the brackets. There's one little problem. We don't have increment statements in Python. We have to write count plus equals 1 instead. So that's one thing we need to know. There is no increment statement in Python. There's no pre-increment, post-increment or anything. We have to use plus equals, minus equals and so on. That's the whole idea. So it's something which we need to know and remember. Now, if you have some question like why it's not there, or why exactly plus plus and minus minus operators are not there when it comes to Python, you guys need to remember that there are multiple ways you can use increment decrement in terms of Python. There are some different scenarios that we have, because in Python the behavior will be different. Because Python thinks, I'll just show you what Python thinks. Python thinks whenever you write plus plus count, it assumes this as plus of plus count. The parser in Python that is there is sort of different. It works like this. To avoid doing this, we make sure that it's not there. Now what's going to be the output of this? It is plus of something, right? Plus of something is plus itself. Now what do we have? We have plus something. Plus something is the value itself. So it's going to return count itself. So to avoid that, Python ensures that you can't do that. That's the whole logic. So let's remove all these semicolons, and that's it. That's done. That's our nth prime program. Now, since this is also done, let's go for the last function, that is to find whether a number is prime or not. Let's quickly do this. The last part. Again, same logic. We'll use define prime of n. Done. Now here, there's no function called square root here. If you really want to get square root, the logic is slightly different. So I'll just explain how do we exactly get square root here. So in Python, you have a particular operator called double star. Double star is an exponent operator. So what this does is, whenever you have a double star 2, it will return a square. Whenever you have a double star 3, it will return a cube. But what I need is square root. Now if you guys remember, square root of a is same as a to the power of 1 by 2, right? So I can do this as a to the power of 1 by 2. This should work. This should give us the square root. And that square root I should store in an integer. Please note, I should convert it to integer, because square root could be a float double value as well. So to store it as integer, I need to use int, but I'm going to wrap a function with an int, that is n to the power of 1 by 2. This is what we're going to do. Or you can also write n to the power of 0.5. Both are the same thing. So we're going to store the result in n. That is done. And we're going to have to use a for loop. For us to use a for loop, remember back the logic, I need to change this. So what do I write instead of this? Can you guys let me know? Take a few seconds, think through. I need you guys to try and let me know. What am I supposed to replace this for loop as? Remember back this logic. I'm supposed to go from 2 till I reach m. Remember, my logic is to go from 2 till I reach m. So use the same idea according to this and figure out what do I need to do so that I can go from 2 until I reach the value m. Not less than m, until I reach m. M should also be considered. So I'm just gonna give you guys a few seconds. Let's see how many of you can give it. Right, I've got a couple of answers. The first answer is right in one part. Second answer is right in another part. If we combine these two answers, as one of you did right now, that will give us the right answer. Remember guys, the logic is for I in range of a comma b is same as for I equals a, I less than b, I plus plus. What I need to do here is for I in equals, what's the value? A is 2. So I'll write here for I in range of, in this case, A is 2. And less than B, it's not less than equal to, it is less than B. If you want to change it to less than, I need to change it to less than m plus 1. So now this condition is similar, less than B. So the value I can give is B, which is m plus 1. And it will increase by 1 automatically. Done. This is what we're going to do. In this, again, I need to check if its remainder is 0, return 0. Otherwise, return 1. That's it. No brackets, no semicolons. That's it. This is our entire program. Now, there could be something wrong. We're not sure. Let's see if it works or not. Now, there's one particular mistake where I've done where n equals 1. I haven't used any semicolon or any colon. Let's update that. Let's try to interpret. I'm gonna give some value like 2. It's gonna give me first prime number. I'll give 4 second prime number. Sorry guys. 6 third prime number. 8 fourth prime number, and so on. Similarly, 1. Is this the first Fibonacci number? What do you guys think? When I give 1, is this correct? First Fibonacci number. If I give 3, if I give 5, if I give 7, is this correct? Something's went terribly wrong here, right? Because if you guys remember, if the number is odd, I'm supposed to get a Fibonacci number perfectly. But what's happening here? Something went terribly wrong over here. Because when you write fib list of 0, 1, it's giving me something wrong. Now, let's assume I don't know Python. So, because we are debugging, right? If this is the first time we are looking at something like this, that means we are debugging. Let's say we don't know anything about Python at all. So, what we're going to do here is just try fib list of 0, 1, and we try to print fib list of 0. Let's see what happens. Sorry, fib list equals. Alright, let's try what happens. Now it's giving me 0. Now it's giving me 0 perfectly. But here, we are getting the wrong value. Because remember, this is not the problem. This print statement is the problem. I'll explain why. Because a lot of us go wrong in this when it comes down to Python. A lot of us go wrong in this. Remember, there are 2 operators in Python. One is single division, another is double division. This is floor division. This is this is your double division. This is your floor division. So what happens here is, in case of double division, please remember, in case of double division, result will be a double value, or in this case it's only float. Result will be a float value. In case of this, result will always be int. So what happens here is, when you do something like this, Fibo of n plus 1 by 2. If I give n as 1, let's take this scenario. If I give n as 1, 1 plus 1 by 2. 2 by 2 should be 1, right? If you guys observe this, fib of n plus 1 by 2, 2 by 2 should be 1, right? That's not the only problem. Look at this other scenario. What are we sending into the function? Look at this. Look at where the brackets of the function are ending. If you observe this, there's something terribly wrong here. because division is not a problem. When you do n plus 1 divided by 2, that's all right, because 1 plus 1 will always give you 2, 2 by 2 will always give you 1. It's always going to be 1. But what are we sending here in Fibo function? We are sending n plus 1. After that, once we get the result, let's say we get the result as 0, we are then dividing it by 2, 0 by 2 or 1 by 2 or whatever it is. That is what we are doing. We are supposed to send n plus 1 by 2 completely in our Fibo function, as one of you rightly pointed out. We are supposed to do one small change where we're going to send this whole value here. So just remember, this is n plus 1 to indicate that addition should happen at higher precedence, and these brackets on the other hand are the ones indicating what is the parameter sent. That's exactly what we're doing. Now our program should work perfectly. If I try 1, now is that right? Now let me go back to one more case. Here comes one more scenario, because remember, list has indices. Index of a list is always an integer. I cannot get a float minus 1. Remember, by performing regular division, we are always considering it as float. It's not an integer. To convert it to integer, you should use double slash. When you do this, it will ensure that an integer is sent here. Whenever integer is sent here, if you are using this in index, it will work, because indices are always integers, indices are never float values. That's why you need to perform float division here particularly. For prime, you don't need to, because we are not considering that as index anywhere. But if you want to be safer with this, you can still do float division so that larger value is not sent. So let's try running this. Now I'll give 1, it gives me first. Now I'll give 3, 5, and 7 should be 2. Sorry guys, 7 should be 2, and then 9 should be 1 plus 2, which is 3, and so on. So we got our program perfectly done, and this is our entire program when it comes down to Python here. So is it clear till here? If any questions are there in these programs, you guys can feel free to let me know, because we saw that there, when we try to convert our program to different languages, or when we try to write our program in different languages, we do face different issues. We do face different errors or different problems. Like in this case, we face a particular problem where any higher size data type cannot be automatically converted to lower size data type, and if condition only takes boolean values, whereas in Python we have to differentiate between float and int value very specifically. So all these sort of differences we need to know and be careful about. Now if this is clear, shall we go ahead with a very different kind of problem? Shall we move on from this? If any questions are there within these programs with you guys, feel free to ask. But I hope everyone's able to understand this program, whatever we have done now, because we have completed the particular program of alternative series. If you guys feel that, yes, it's somewhat easy, we are able to understand it or something like that, you guys can feel free and let me know. We'll quickly move ahead over to the next one. You guys can let me know, as always, with just one text in live chat like, yes, we got it, let's move on to the next program, or anything like that. That'll be perfect. I have one question. Can you paste Python program? All of these are pasted. See, Python, and then Java, and along with Java, even C++. All three programs are here. I'm going to be sharing all three of these with you guys. So I have one particular question before I go ahead. One of you have asked yesterday that coding is a bit difficult, and I stated that particularly first learn one programming language perfectly and then go for data structures. But is there any website or tutorial from our end? One best thing is always that being from Quant Masters, we have our own program. So if you want to enroll in that particular program to go through entire thing, like if you find it difficult with programming initially and you want to go through entire program with our live programs for aptitude, verbal, interview preparations, technical, all combinations, with everything here, like data structures, algorithms, competitive coding, everything. You can check out description of the channel and get more info. But if you really want to learn on your own end, I wouldn't suggest a single website, because there's no single website which is gonna give you every information about a programming language. It's just not there. The way we want to learn for interviews, there's no single website. So you may need to learn basics of programming language from any textbook. Then you may need to go through official documentation of programming languages to learn special functions from there. Once it is done, then you have to go through how to implement data structures from there. There's a lot of, again, courses for that. Our course is one thing that I would, of course, not plug in, but I'd suggest, because I feel that it's a really good one. Or one thing always is, you need to search every topic individually, separately, because most of the cases, most YouTubers or most books or most websites don't give every information as required. You may go through one particular website, it may not give you all data entirely or something like that. That's something that you may need to know. At the question by Amruta, I'll be sharing the entire code, all the content by end of this session. Not to worry. Because all this content together, I have to copy paste it to a link and share in the chat box. I'll do that by end of the session. All right. Not to worry about that. Now, let us move ahead over here very, very quickly over to a very different kind of program. Now, what do you guys think about this? I need your honest opinion on this. Do you guys find pattern programs easy? What do you think? Are pattern programs easy? Are they difficult? Are they at an intermediate level? There are a lot of different kinds of pattern programs you can expect, right? You think they're easy, difficult, or on a medium level? What do you guys think? So, some of you are saying they are somewhat easy. Okay, so yes, they are also based on two-dimensional arrays as well. So most of the ones that are asked, most of the pattern programs that are asked are going to be simple, either pyramid program or inverted pyramid program, or half, or pyramid to the left or pyramid to the right, or a diamond program, or something like a hollow diamond problem where values are stored here and nothing inside. All the center part is empty, but the values are stored like this. You can expect all these sort of questions, all these kind of questions, including something like half pyramid, half diamond, where only outer part of the diamond will be filled to an imaginary line. So all of these kind of questions can be asked. Now, for all the intermediate and easy answers, here's the question. Here's my question to you guys. The question is like this. You will receive a string as input. Alright, you will receive a string as input for a pattern. Once you receive a string, let's say the string is Jack. Simple, the string is Jack. Along with the string, you will receive an integer as input as well. Sometimes they will not even give you the integer. They will not even literally give you the integer at all. So they will only give you the string. Or in some cases, I'll do with the integer, so you can get to know with different numbers also how to do. So let's say they give you an integer like 6. If an integer is 6 and the string is Jack, here's what you need to print. You need to print Jack till 6 characters. You need to repeat them through and print 6 characters. After that, you need to do the next statement. Let me quickly do this. Here as J A. Okay, JA is already done here. I need to do the next characters, CK and then JA. After that, C and then K. That is done. Now, after this, next thing you need to do is again go for Jack is entirely done. Now we have to start with JA again, then JACK and then, sorry, not JACK. JA is worked, it's completed already. So we need to do CK and then JA, and then we need to work with again, JA is done. So CK, JA, and CK. This is the kind of program you can expect. So if you observe this, there's a hollow pyramid, hollow diamond over here in between. Only outside part of this is filled like this. Does this sound easy to work with? Is this easy and simple? What do you guys think? If such a question is asked when it comes down to pyramids, do you think this is easy for us now? Now you guys can let me know. No, now comes a slightly different answer. It's not so easy. It's just slightly difficult. Agreed. But it's not so easy as expected with the previous program. So now our answers are changing from yes to no. That's all right. Because when it comes to simple pyramid programs, of course, we know how it works. It's just 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, and everything. Interviewers know that you know this. If interviewers know that you know this, why would they ask it? They want to ask something where they are testing your logical skills during the interview. They don't want to test your memorization skills. They don't want to test your skills of remembering the lines of a program. So they're going to give you always a question that you have never answered till now. So that's the kind of questions you can expect. So we're going to try this scenario. Remember, we're going to try this little example where they're going to give you a string and they're going to give you number of times, number of lines you're supposed to print or something like that. And they're also going to give you conditions. Most of the times they will do that given you have in TCS Digital particularly. I'll take this example. In TCS Digital particularly, since you have 60 minutes of time, a time limit of 60 minutes, you have to answer 2 questions within 60 minutes. So on an average, you can take each question will take 30 minutes. So you won't get way too complicated problems. You're going to get an average to easy to intermediate level generally. If they say that 60 minutes you will only get 1 question, then you may expect a lot of advanced questions which are based on a lot of advanced data structures, algorithms, and everything. But you can expect these kind of programs as well. So let's give this a check. Let's give this a very, very simple check. Now, let's take this scenario. If user says 10 lines, you need to print that entire logic for 10 lines in length. If user says 8 lines, you need to print it for 8 lines in length. If user says 6 lines, you need to print it for 6 lines in length. Now, condition in this question, this particular question is given in such a way that condition is you have to print it for some n number of lines. And it will always be given with this scenario. Please remember, it will always be given with this scenario that total number of lines will always be odd. Don't worry, I'll explain why it will always be odd. Total number of lines will always be odd, and you'll get some example like this. So for us to understand this better, let me draw one simple example. Like let me draw something very simple and easy with numbers. Right, let's take this. This is your initial part of the pyramid. Then the next, you're going to repeat the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So for 5 characters, this is how we got. This is our hollow pyramid, hollow diamond. Similarly, if there are 4 characters on the other hand, I have one question. Image, I did not understand. Image as in? Okay, there's some buffer. Is it? There's some issue? Alright, I hope it's much clearer now. I hope whatever buffer or issue was there is solved entirely now. I hope you guys can see this. Alright, perfect. So the basic idea was the reason this could happen is because there's some low latency. So you may face some slight buffer in between. Don't worry. Do not worry. It will work throughout. Not to worry. Alright, so if it stays for a longer time, please do let me know. We'll ensure to solve it. Now let's go ahead here very, very quickly. Now, on the other hand, if there are even numbers, like let's say, for example, this 1, 2, 3, 4, and then let's say 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's say even digits like this. Such a scenario won't be given in our current question, because remember this, your number of lines should be odd. For number of lines should be odd, the length should always be odd to begin with. If the number of lines should be even, you need to add one extra line in between. That's when there's going to be two gaps in here. So that's not going to be the case. This is going to be the scenario. So I'll give you the interview question. With this understood, now I'll give you the interview question. Let's try solving this. If user says 7 lines, then I need to divide the logic into two parts. Please observe this. If user says here 5 lines, I need to divide this one part where we are increasing number of spaces, another part where we are decreasing number of spaces. So I can say, in other words, this is a separate pyramid. This is a separate pyramid and this is a separate pyramid. You need to do two patterns. There should be two different patterns. The first pattern is where number of spaces will increase. Second pattern is where number of spaces will decrease. We need to do it like this. If we solve this particular problem, then our question, whatever I stated, is not going to be difficult. So remember, the logic is similar to this. Please remember this. Number of lines will always be odd. I'll just write this question as well for your reference very, very quickly so that we don't take up too much time here. Input will be an odd number. Alright. Output. Input, there are going to be two inputs. Remember, one is an odd number. Along with that, a string. You need to print the string for that odd number of lines. So I'll give you a sample output here. Example, let's say 7, and let's say Jack is the string. So since 7 is the number of lines, we need to remember how many times are we supposed to print in first line. Remember, if it is 5 lines, I'm printing 5 characters in the first line. If it is 7 lines, I'm supposed to print 7 characters in first line. Simple logic. So I'll have to write Jack and JAC here. Then second line, KJA space CKJ. That's it. Now third line, J is already done. So from A we're gonna start. So A, C, and then KJ. Done. Now the last line, A and then C. Now these are our first 4 lines where we are increasing the number of spaces. So if input is 7, we need to divide it by 2. When we divide it by 2, we get 3.5. So let's take a ceiling value of it. First 4 lines, we're going to increase the space. Next 3 lines, we're going to decrease the space. So after C, there is K, then J again, AC. Then again, K, J, A, and then C, K, and then J. Then after that, A, C, K, and then J, A, C, K. That's it. This is our entire program. This is how we need to solve. Remember, odd number and a string are the input. We need to solve it in this particular way. So whenever the odd number is there, clue, based on the odd number, divide odd number by 2. So whatever value we'll get, half for increasing space pyramid, the rest half for decreasing space pyramid. That's it. This is our logic. And you need to remember, you need to very clearly observe the question and try to work through it. You can take this as half for decreasing, and you can take this as the half for increasing, because you can take this as the half for decreasing space and this is the half for increasing space. Or you can do it the opposite way. This is the half for increasing space and this is the half for decreasing space. Now, this is the next program that we're going to solve. Now, when are we going to solve this? In our next session, next live YouTube session. So if this is the first video you're watching of ours, just make sure you guys do follow and subscribe so that you guys can get a notification of when our next live video is going to go on. We also have aptitude live sessions which are coming up along with this as well. So stick around and you guys can watch these, and hopefully these help with your interviews. So I'm just gonna share this content with you guys so that you guys can access this. You also know which is the question we're gonna solve next in the coming session. So you can try it by yourself and we'll see if you're able to do it. If you're not, not to worry, because we're gonna help you solve it in the next session. And that's gonna be a live session as usual, so you can ask any questions that you may have from your end. So let me just share this link very, very quickly for you guys. So the link will be shared in just a few seconds. Kindly hold on. So in the link, we also have our previous programs. So please scroll through the end of the link that will be shared so that you can get today's questions. So it even has the previous video questions also if you want to have access to them. So with this, we'll go ahead and try to solve this in our next session. But at the same time, if you guys want to solve it in meantime, by the next session, you guys can do that as well. So I have one question. Can you please use Python for teaching for the coding? Let's try to see in the next session. Let's try managing and seeing this. But even if we start with C, because most of us generally begin programming with C. So even if we start with C, don't worry. When we start with C++, don't worry. When we go to Python, whatever question you may have, feel free to ask. Since it's a live session, I will answer how to solve whatever it is. So you don't have to worry about that. Alright, with this, we'll end our session today. We'll catch up again, guys. Have a good evening and take care.